Good day, everybody. This is Zemar Sopertute, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Inquirer Show. We're broadcasting live from Atlanta, Georgia on September 11th, 2020. Hope all is well with you in the world. On today's broadcast, we're going to do our NFL predictions in the Gridiron Blitz portion of our show. We'll break down every division, every conference, our Super Bowl picks, and some individual awards. And we'll also discuss last night's Houston and Kansas City contest. We'll next transition into the technical side of Georgia athletics. The Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets open their college football season tomorrow on September 12th. We'll preview that contest, as well as look around the rest of the college sports landscape in the state of Georgia. We'll then transition to the original free kick portion of our broadcast, where we preview tomorrow's contest against Atlanta United's contest against Nashville SC. We'll hear from manager Stephen Glass and some players as well. And finally, we'll go into Miscellaneous Department, where we'll delve into the NBA playoffs and some other news and notes in the world of sports. Hope all is well with you. As I mentioned earlier, we're recording once again from Atlanta, Georgia, heading towards the weekend. Busiest time of the year that we've possibly ever had, yet the quietest time we've ever had. Let me explain. Last night, on September 10th, first time in professional sports history, and college sports involved as well, we had NHL game, NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, WNBA all take place on the same day. And that's not even including college football and U.S. Open tennis, and those PGA had an event as well, all taking place on September 10th. What's the reason for that? Obviously, the coronavirus pandemic has pushed a lot of sports back in the calendar, and it's collided with current sports that normally take place in the late summer into the early fall. I do say it's the busiest time, but it's also the quietest time, because not for media members like me, myself, and fans like you, or supporters of teams, you most likely are not going to be attending your team's favorite event or your team's sporting competition by the time you listen to this show. If you're an NFL fan, unless you are in Kansas City last night, and I think in Miami, Florida, the Dolphins are hosting a game. I don't think there are any other stadiums that are hosting football fans in attendance for their contest, at least this week. But I will say, after seeing Kansas City last night, and I think they had 15 to 18,000, I don't know what the exact number ended up being. If I'm an NFL owner for any of the other franchises, I'm going to my administration and saying, why can't we have those fans in attendance? Like here in Atlanta, we'll keep it local. There'll be no fans in attendance for the first two home games of the year for the Falcons. I do know they host Seattle on September 13th in week 1, and I think they have another home game in September that they're not going to have any fans in attendance. If I'm looking at the Kansas City game, though, it's like, why can't we have the spread out fans? And now the fans, to be fair, they're talking about social distancing and having people with masks on. There are multiple camera shots of people sitting right next to each other, and multiple camera shots of people not wearing a mask. And that's unavoidable. If you're going to have, because the mandate is supposed to be, you're supposed to social distance, you're supposed to have a mask on the entire time you're in the stadium. Well, as we've seen from political events to concerts, your local lake or pool wherever you're listening to the show, or the beach, probably your local supermarket even, not everyone is abiding by the rules that are being passed down or required by the private business establishments or at the federal, local level from your government. So when you have a gathering of people like that, it's inevitable that you're going to have people that are not going to necessarily follow the rules 100%. But still, if you're watching that contest and you're Mr. Blank for the Falcons or any of the other owners, you're saying, why can't we have at least 10,000, 15,000? That's better than nothing in that regard. So I'm very interested to see how the rest of that plays out as far as the week goes. But transitioning back to myself as a media member, I mentioned all the activities. I'm not attending anything. I got a note from Georgia State football about the requirements as far as attending the contest as a media member. It involves temperature tests, social distancing in the press box. I'm not going to be able to go into the locker room, not able to go. We're not going to do the traditional press conference where you gather in a room and speak to a coach and some players. It's all being done through Zoom. My response to that was, I'm just going to cover the game from home, and it's televised on TV, so I'm just going to watch it from home because I'm safe. I don't have to worry about all the rules and regulations. I saved some gas money, honestly, driving down from where we are in Ackworth, Georgia, down to Atlanta, Georgia. That's a 35 to 40 mile trip, all things considered, when you look at the route. So I saved gas money. It's on television, so I get to see that. And the press conferences are being done on Zoom. If you're listening to our show, I'm sure you've done at least one Zoom or Google Duo or Microsoft Teams meeting of some form or variety, whether it's through your work or through your family or friends. Video chatting, in essence, is what it is. So we could do that from home. Now, you do miss out going to the games and seeing the actual competition, which is what I'd like to see. You do miss seeing your fellow media members. There's some colleagues that you see enough of. You learn about friends and family. You become friendly. You know about their families. You know about what's going on in their world. So you miss some of that. You miss the interaction with the players and coaches. That's my favorite part of the gig, is talking and giving interviews or doing interviews and learning about people on and off the field. That's very much limited right now. So you add all of that together. That's why you have all of these events going on. That's just not college football. That's like my specific example. Same thing in Major League Baseball. Same thing with NHL, the playoffs, NBA. Unless you really have to be there or you have a national gig or some exceptions, a lot of us are covering contests from the confines of our home. And there's some good parts to that, as I mentioned, financially. But then there's also a lot of not so good parts of it. But the games are still going on, and that's very important. And speaking of games that are taking place and are going on, let's go into the Gridiron Blitz portion of our show where we discuss the NFL. Some notes from last night's contest that opened the year. Kansas City defeated Houston 34-20. We'll start with the Chiefs, and then we'll get to the Texans later on. I think what you're going to see with a lot of these teams, and you'll notice this in my predictions as we go down to divisions and the conferences and things like that, continuity is the biggest attribute I think that's going to be for this season. Well, a continuity, it ties into availability. That's going to be the biggest thing. Availability / continuity. That's going to be the biggest thing, at least for the first part of the year. You're going to have teams that are well established, same head coach, same quarterback, same system. That's very, very important. And we saw that with Kansas City getting a 34-20 win over the Texans. We'll start the offense. Pat Mahomes, only 211 yards passing, but 3 touchdowns, very efficient. But the Chiefs know what they're doing. Eric Bieniemy, who interviewed for several positions in the offseason, the current OC, offensive coordinator for the Chiefs, he came back for another year with them. And Andy Reid, a very strong offensive mind as well as the head coach. That offense is going to continue to roll. They brought everyone back. And now you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 138 rushing yards and a TD run in his NFL debut. Kansas City's offense is very efficient right now. And what you like about it is that you saw Houston pretty much play a deep zone and pretty much they had their safeties and cornerbacks playing far back, and Mahomes was just able. They threw a lot of the offense threw a lot of screens, a lot of short passes. Travis Kelce, he had a very productive night, 6 catches, 50 yards, and a TD. You saw Watkins had a big catch for a touchdown. Hill had a TD catch as well. They spread the ball out much better than normal. Because everyone thinks that it's Pat Mahomes is going to throw it deep to Tyreek Hill every single play, things like that. No, they ran intermediate routes and short routes and picked them apart in that way. And then when you have Edwards-Helaire who get 25 carries, you have a balanced offensive attack. 32 pass attempts by Mahomes, 20, and let's see, I'm doing a quick math here. 25. So 30 plus rushing attempts as well for the Chiefs. So that looked really good. Chris Jones signed a big contract in the offseason. He had a sack and a half. The Kansas City defense, their biggest thing is they're not going to score 34 points every game, but they're going to be in the mid to high 20s every single contest, or most contests. I mean, there's exceptions to every scenario. All their defense has to do is, 20 points. That's if they give up average 20 points given up per contest, they're going to win another 12, 13 games this season. And that's where the Chiefs, they're very good in that regard. They don't have to have the 85 Bears or the early 2000s Baltimore Ravens type defense to just dominate in that regard. So that's what you saw from them. Houston has major troubles. Now, you look at the Texans, and they have the same head coach in Bill O'Brien, same quarterback in Deshaun Watson. You would think there'd be some more continuity there, and that'd be a good thing. They did not look sharp at all. A lot of missed tackles. The protections were not very good for Deshaun Watson. He was hit quite a bit in the contest. Had at least one or multiple false starts. Now, I know the Chiefs they got great fans and supporters in Arrowhead, and it's a very intimidating place, and the acoustics of it make it loud. But the fact that you had false starts with only, as I mentioned, a 15 to 20,000 fans in an 80,000 seat stadium, and I know they were you can hear through the crowd, they actually got a little noisy, but still, you can't have that type of stuff taking place when you're a professional team with false starts, and the protection was just not very good. And I know that you think, okay, Nuke Hopkins, he's with the Cardinals right now. They traded David Johnson, got him back, the running back. I think if Hopkins was out there, it wouldn't have made much of a difference. I think fundamentally, and Houston's still going to be a very good team. We'll get to the predictions, you'll see that I still think they're going to have a solid season. But they're not the elite level championship caliber team that the Chiefs are. And that biggest reason is just the offensive line is not there. I know they traded for Tunsil, and they've signed him to a pretty good deal, but they just have not been able to protect Deshaun Watson on a consistent basis. And you saw that happen last night in the contest. And now I'll address it right now. I think that, and we're going to, just for the first few weeks, we're going to start doing, I think it's a roll call. I think Shannon Sharp may have said it, or someone, I want to give them credit, but it's the anthem roll call, where we're going to look at every national anthem that's played. You're going to do it like a checklist. Who's kneeling, who's not, who's standing, who's sitting down, who's has a fist up, who doesn't. And we had that last night. It was the first game of the season, so we were all going to check that out. I guess Alicia Keys, she did the Lift Every Voice, which is we call it the Black National Anthem, but it's the Negro National Anthem. She sang it. I guess the Chiefs were out for that, and the National Anthem as well. And they stood on the sidelines, or they were on the field for it. The Houston Texans decided not to be on the field for it. That's their right. That's their decision. And the two teams, after the anthems were played, locked arms as a sign of unity in the middle of the field. And you heard some boos from the fans and from the stands. And my thing is with this as well, and this is my last point, and then we'll get to some actual on-field, we'll talk about on-field stuff with the predictions. If you're going to have this, if you call it protesting, or your statements and things like that, like the teams are doing, like the players, and they've been given a right to do that, that's fine. You're going to get boos as well. Not everyone is going to be down for the cause or for your belief or policies to change or things like that. And I've seen media members get mad at the fans and saying it's very disrespectful and this is insulting. You're going to have boos and people not completely agreeing with it. Now, they can't. Would I have booed myself personally? No, I'm not going to boo. I agree with a lot of the players and what they're trying to do, but I can understand, and we've talked about this on the show before. Myself personally, I didn't actually see all that stuff live. I heard about it later, and they replayed it during the game. Everything is unavoidable, but I've tried to avoid as much of that stuff as I can. I've avoided all national anthems in all the sports when they play them, and because I don't want to be the roll call guy, as I mentioned, seeing who's standing, who's sitting, all that stuff. I don't really like pre-games in general. I just want to turn on the game when it's actually being played. Once the puck is dropped or the ball is kicked off or the first pitch or whatever equivalency for the sport that you follow, and I want to watch the ball game, and the game takes place, and then afterwards, if people want, and with the press conferences, if the players and coaches want to make their statements and their opinions, that's cool too. That's not my jam, personally, but if they want to do that, that's fine. But you cannot, if you're going to put yourself out there as a coach or player and things like that, not everyone is going to be compliant or completely agreeing with the cause or what your belief is, what you're extending. They should allow you to do it, and that's fine. But if you're going to hear boos, just expect it. Not everyone's going to be for it. So people that are just up in arms over what hearing the Chiefs fans and supporters or people in the stadium, because I shouldn't just say Chief fans. That's very generalizing. But people there were boos, and it's going to happen. So you just have to deal with it and accept everything that's going on in that regard. And we'll talk about it actually after the first week of games as well, because I'm very interested to see some franchises, especially the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones. He's been very divisive in his views on these type of things. Drew Brees, we talked about him with the New Orleans Saints. He had a very interesting summer as well with it. Though we'll discuss it just this first week of the season, because it is relevant news to what's going on. But after this first opening week, I'm gonna try not to go there as much as I can as far as the protesting and as things go with the NFL. Now, on the field itself, speaking of Drew Brees, we'll start with the NFC and my thoughts on it. I'm going to give how I think each division is going to play out, and as I go through each team, it'll give you an idea of what I think is going to happen as things go along. We'll start with the NFC South. I think New Orleans wins the division ultimately. I've been saying it once again, and a continued theme, continuity. You have Brees at quarterback, Sean Payton, head coach. They bring back a lot of talent. They've made some good signings. I think Tampa is going to finish second in the division. They'll be a playoff squad, but they have a lot of moving parts that they're trying to work out. And look, Tom Brady, many will argue, is the greatest quarterback of all time. He had a tremendous run in New England. No one's going to take that away from him. But when he's in his early 40s, he did regress as a player last season. Not only by his standards, but he was an average NFL quarterback. If it wasn't Tom Brady and it was a no-name person, you would have said he was an average quarterback just from statistically, physically, everything along those lines. Now, he does go to an improved offense in Tampa. I will give him that. When you have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin as your receivers, Gronkowski, future Hall of Famer at tight end, along with O.J. Howard, who I think is going to really improve this season in a two tight end set, which is what Brady ran quite a bit in New England. I think he'll do well there. Leonard Fournette at running back, the former first-round pick. He was a very productive player in Jacksonville at running back. He had a falling out there. He's now on the cheap and very motivated with the Bucs. And they have a solid offensive line. I think they'll do very well in that regard. I think it's going to be an adjustment, though, with Bruce Arians, the head coach, and Tom Brady. If you looked at Arians in his previous spots and then last year in Tampa, a lot of deep throws, long passes. That's why Jameis Winston threw 30 interceptions last year. And now, Winston caused a lot of those interceptions on his own, but also their style of play was to push the ball down the field. And when you do that, you throw for 5,000 yards, but you also put yourself in position to throw 30 interceptions. Brady's not going to do that. He's not going to turn the ball over that much. But his arm and just where he is in his career is not able to throw the ball deeply as consistent as Arians has used in his past offenses. So we'll have to see what he does there as far as an adjustment goes. But I think the Bucs if they win the division, will it surprise me? I don't think so. It wouldn't be shocking if they even get to double-digit wins. But ultimately, I'm going to take the Saints to win the division. The Falcons are going to finish third in the NFC South. We look at all the toys: Julio Jones, Matt Ryan, Calvin Ridley. You look at they have Todd Gurley now at running back. Then you look at the defense, bringing in Dante Fowler. You say Keanu Neal is back. and everything like that. He's going to play a full year, and that's really good. All that stuff. The Falcons have bad offensive and defensive line play, and that's why all these years we've seen them have the peaks and valleys. That's how you can go from winning 3 games in a row to losing 4 games in a row, all in the same season. And that inconsistency is going to stay the same unless I see something very drastic take place. And Grady Jarrett, he's an all-star. Thinking of another sport, plays at an all-pro level at times as a defensive end or defensive lineman, and he's a Pro Bowler. That's what I'm trying to say. He's very good, and you have a lot of youth on the offensive line as well, and then you have to worry about Mack at center if he's going to start regressing. But I just don't like their line play at all. A big year for Tack McKinley. He's in a prove-it year as far as his contract goes. I just don't know if you're going to see enough from their line play to make them a contender as far as the playoffs go. Carolina, big rebuild for them. Matt Rule at head coach. Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. They're trying to figure out a lot of stuff. Christian McCaffrey, probably the best running back in the NFL. He's going to have a lot of touches and numbers, but I think as far as wins and losses, not much going on for Carolina. NFC East, it was a coin flip between Dallas and Philadelphia. I'm going to go with the Cowboys. I think they bring back a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. Their offensive line is not as good as it's been in the past. Fredericks is out for the team. You look at Smith and Martin, they have regressed as far as from their linemen from 2-3 years ago, but still a very solid offensive line. Dak is a prove-it year for him. He's going to, have a solid campaign. Ezekiel Elliott, no holdout, no issues with the contract. I think if he comes in shape and comes ready, he can contend for a rushing title. And that's when the team is at its best. And the people have looked at the Cowboys and they look at Amari Cooper as a big wide receiver threat. CeeDee Lamb is now on the team. They look at those guys like, and Gallup as well. Those guys can each catch for 1,000 plus yards in receiving. That's fine and good, and that'd be good for the fantasy people out there. But if they are going to win, and I think they're going to go back to this, Elliott has to be a major contributor for the squad. We need to see, or they need to see, a 1,300 to 1,500 rushing yardage year for the Cowboys to ultimately be successful. I think Mike McCarthy's an upgrade at head coach over Jason Garrett. That's going to help the cause. Defensively, they do need to get more from a Dexter Lawrence and some of their other guys. I mean, Jalen Smith and Van Noe are very strong linebackers. Secondary, they lost Byron Smith, so you're a little concerned about that part of it, the pass defense. But their front seven, if they're healthy and ready to go, and they've struggled with that aspect of it, the availability, they can contend with maybe a lot of other front sevens in the NFL. I think they're going to get some breaks, and I think the Cowboys win the division. Eagles, if Carson Wentz can stay upright for 16 games, they're another team that can win double digits and become a playoff team. He has not been able to stay healthy for an entire year, and I think that their offense has been a little bit overrated as far as their weapons. They've been limited in that regard, and that's why I think the Eagles are going to finish second. The Giants and Washington franchise, similar spots. They have individuals who are very talented, and you look at them out there. For the Giants, Saquon Barkley, he could arguably be the best running back in the NFL, but not much else. Daniel Jones, year 2, he has a lot to prove and a lot to improve on. Mike Judge, new head coach. There's just once again a lot of moving parts there that are not going to, I think, lead to a lot of wins this year. Washington, same scenario. Chase Young, who I think is going to have a very solid year. He's in front running for Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think he's going to put up some solid numbers and statistically do very good. But Dwayne Haskins, we got to figure him out as far as quarterback. Year 2 with the squad, is he the franchise quarterback that they need? He has a lot to prove as well. But I think through that, there's going to be a lot of growing pains. So I have the Cowboys winning the NFC East. NFC North, this is a division I've seen 3 different picks for it. I've seen Green Bay, Minnesota, and Detroit. in the end, I'm going to take Green Bay to win the division. I'm going to take the best quarterback in the division, and I think maybe the best coach in the division, and Nagy, and the continuity, year 2 of Nagy with Aaron Rodgers. I think they'll work out. I don't think the Jordan Love issue, as far as the backup quarterback, is going to rear its ugly head this season. Now, this time next year, I think it's a different conversation. But for now, as we're recording this show, I think Green Bay ultimately finds a way to win the division, very hotly contested division. Minnesota, Kirk Cousins, quarterback, he's very solid, but I just think that in the end, and Adam Thielen, maybe a top 5 receiver in the NFL. You have Dalvin Cook, very strong running back, so the pieces are there. It's going to be a very interesting pick. But I think ultimately I'm going to take Green Bay to win the division. Detroit, I've seen they may be a dark horse. You get Matthew Stafford just has to be healthy. And I know Patricia, kind of polarizing head coach, ups and downs with them. I just think that they're not consistent enough to put together a playoff squad. Chicago, they have a major issue I say Nagy. I met LaFleur. I'm going back on my notes and I'm getting my divisions mixed up. Matt LaFleur, head coach of Green Bay. Because I know some of y'all are going to say, wow, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I know what I'm talking about. Matt Nagy is with Chicago. That's what I meant to say as far as the head coaching goes. Now, Nagy's a solid coach, and Mitch Trubisky, as we're recording this show, is going to be the starter. Now, he's on make or break years. Trubisky is heading towards the Blaine Gabbert and in some way that if he doesn't work out this year, he's going to be in QB purgatory for the rest of his career. And when you saw Watson and Mahomes play last night, 2 guys that the Bears could have drafted instead of Trubisky, it hurts even more. But I think that Chicago is in for a rough season. As far as I know, Nick Foles is there, and he might be a starter there, but that's temporary. They got to put Trubisky in there and see if he is the answer ultimately for the team. Finally, NFC West, another division that I've seen different names or different teams being thrown out there. Even some Cardinals love. I think the Cardinals, they're going to put up a lot of points. Kyler Murray, I think, sophomore year is going to have a very strong campaign. Having Nuke Hopkins as your top receiver, that's fun. That's very good. You know, Cliff Kingsbury, the head coach, they're going to throw a lot. They're going to do a lot of good things. And Chandler Jones, defensive lineman, he's going to be running for Defensive Player of the Year. He's that talented, that skilled. But their line plays stinks. It's not good at all. And when your offensive line is bad, and outside of Jones, your defensive line isn't strong, not much optimism, I think, there. But Arizona's going to be fun. They're going to play a lot of late games, put up a lot of points. And people think that they can do that enough to win a division. I don't think so, because I think Seattle is that squad this year. They've been that squad the past few years. Them in San Francisco. It's honestly a coin flip right now. But I'm going to take Seattle. I'm going to take the better quarterback, and I think the better coach. And that's not disrespect to San Francisco, because Jimmy Garoppolo is a very good quarterback, and we've seen what Shanahan has been able to do there. I mean, we made the Super Bowl last year, and we're very close to winning the championship. But I think that Super Bowl hangover is a factor that they're going to regress this year. They've dealt with injuries. I think they'll still finish second in the division, and they could be a playoff team. And I think Seattle with Russell Wilson and with Metcalf, I think he's going to have a breakout year, second year wide receiver. Their line play, I think, is going to get better this season. I'm going to take Seattle to win the division. And as far as my NFC, so I have New Orleans, Dallas, Green Bay, and Seattle winning the division. As far as the divisions, as far as wild cards, we'll take Tampa, Minnesota, maybe San Francisco. Look along those lines. The Rams, I mentioned LA. I think the Rams are okay, but I think they've lost a lot over the past few years. Defensively, I know they signed Jalen Ramsey to a long-term deal. That can help in that regard. But I got to see more from Jared Goff. I just don't think last season was a good year for him. I think he'll bounce back a little bit, but not enough to be a playoff team in a very highly competitive NFC. And when it all shakes down, man, it came down to New Orleans and Seattle. And I think I'm going to take Seattle to make it to the Super Bowl. I thought they were very close last year. They could have won, but it didn't happen. New Orleans is very intriguing as well. This is Drew Brees' last year with the team. He hasn't announced it yet, but I think that's where we're leaning towards. I think we all know that. So you got to figure to be very motivated in that regard. And it's very interesting because you have New Orleans and Seattle, probably the two best home field advantages in the NFL, are negated quite a bit with the current rules that we're living with right now. So you have to wonder, is that going to be an impact on them in any way? I don't think so. I think both teams are strong contenders and will be right there for a championship. But ultimately, I'm going to take the Seahawks to make their way out of the NFC. AFC, let's transition on to that part of the NFL. All right, so transition to the AFC. Start the East, because it's got to go back and go to New England. That's the biggest question. How does Bill Belichick handle the departure of Tom Brady? Plus, you have the addition of Cam Newton, who on paper or physically, you're looking at it, Cam is one of the most physically gifted quarterbacks in the NFL physically. Size, speed, arm strength. I think his arm is very underrated as far as arm strength goes. But, he's such a dual threat in that regard. We've seen him a few years ago, MVP with the Panthers, and led him to a Super Bowl appearance, all that stuff. But now he goes to New England. He's been injured the past few years and working his way through major injuries, foot injuries, shoulder, things that are very important for a quarterback. Now he goes to New England with Bill Belichick and the Patriots, who for the first time in close to 20 years are not going to have Tom Brady on their roster and as a starting quarterback. We know the resume of Belichick and Brady, what they've done. We delved into Tampa, but how does he handle it? I think the underrated part or the underreported part of all of this is the departures that New England is dealing with. They've lost several players due to free agency and for sitting out for the for the COVID and everything along those lines. Despite all of that and everything going on, I still think the Patriots find a way to win the division. I think Cam is going to be my comeback player of the year over Ben Roethlisberger. I'll get to Pittsburgh when we get to that part of the AFC. But I think he is going to have a solid year with them. I think they're going to use his multiple skills. It's not going to be like Brady, where Brady sat back and just picked teams apart, throwing the ball short intermediate routes, seams to the tight ends. I think there's going to be a little bit more variety in their offense, and it's Belichick. I'm not going to bet against probably the short list of greatest head coaches in football history. He's going to find a way to get that team right and get them ready. So I'm going to take New England to win the division. Buffalo is right on their heels, though, and they made some good moves. Getting Diggs from Minnesota to be their top receiver was a solid move. McDermott is a very solid head coach. So I'm going to say he's top 5 in the NFL as far as working with the resources that he has. However, Josh Allen has to be more consistent at the quarterback position. And we saw that in the first round game or the wild card game against Houston last year. He made some big runs and big throws, but also made some dumb runs and dumb throws and multiple turnovers that cost or put Buffalo in a very bad position in that wild card game that they really should have won if you look back at it. I think over 16 games, he has to improve his throwing on a more consistent level, and I don't know if he has done that. And I just think the continuity of and Buffalo has continuity as well, same quarterback, same head coach, but I'm just not going to bet against New England. I think they're going to find a way to win the division. I don't think they're going to advance far in the playoffs, but I think they're going to find a way to be the top team in the AFC East. Buffalo, and when we talked over them, Miami and the Jets, kind of a coin flip. I think with Miami, we saw them play very well under Flores the first year as head coach of the team. I think Tua is ultimately going to be the starter for the team, and the rookie quarterback, he's going to have his ups and downs. They're starting Fitzpatrick right now, which is smart because he's experienced and everything like that. No preseason, and we didn't talk about that. As far as no preseason games, I know some of the players are happy about that, and even the fans. Like, we hate preseason. We want to see the real games. Preseason is very important for a lot of rookie players and first young players to get used to NFL system, even if it's the Tua first round pick or it's the undrafted free agent. It gets them used to playing. It also gets the players used to being on the field. We saw Houston. It looked like they were in the middle of their first preseason game, just with the lack of tackling and the sloppiness of it. Kansas City was the exception. That's very rare. I think we're going to see more sloppy football the first few weeks than great football. And what the lack of preseason hurt for most were rookies like Tua, who had been able to get on the field, get some experience, even if he was not going to start in the regular season as the first quarterback for Miami. He would at least gotten some action, gotten some reps in. And it hurts Joe Burrow down in Cincinnati. All the quarterbacks, Herbert at San Diego. I want to say San Diego so much though. With the Los Angeles Chargers, all those guys that really get hurt. And you'll see that Andrew Thomas as well, I think, with the Giants. I know he's a big offensive lineman. He's like, hey, just throw him in there, hit somebody. But still, getting the timing and continuity is very, very tough for the younger players when they don't have a preseason. So when I look at the predictions, I think Miami ultimately starts Tua, and I have them finishing third in division right now because the Jets are in a very, very bad place under Adam Gase, and you got to start worrying about whether Barkley is the answer at quarterback. I know circumstances have not been the best. The Jets are just a rudderless franchise right now, but they are dealing with a lot. If the Jets finish ahead of Miami, that would not surprise me. But I have Miami finishing third right now. Another competitive division of intrigue is the AFC North. Baltimore, I think, wins the division. Lamar Jackson, he's not going to have the type of regular season he did this past year, because that's very, very hard to duplicate. But I think he is going to do enough to win the division. I don't think they'll win as many games either. I think they had such a perfect storm of a year last season. This is very hard to replicate. But Jackson means he's an elite quarterback. We've seen him, what he's done the past 2 years, towards the end of his rookie campaign, and then last year, MVP of the league. Can't do any better than that. And they return a lot of players as well. So I like Baltimore to win the division. Cleveland, I have finishing second. New head coach, former OC at Minnesota. So I think that they're in a conflict as well, though. I think with their offense. They have Baker Mayfield, and people want them to throw the ball to Landry and Odell Beckham at the wings or at the receiver. And now they signed Austin Hooper, free agent from the Atlanta Falcons. So they say, hey, throw the ball 1,000 times and get that going. No. Their best route, ultimately, will be to hand the ball off to Nick Chubb and their other running backs, play action, be a little bit more conservative, and then go for the big plays when that's available. And that'll be their best offense. The problem is when you have an Odell Beckham and Landry and Hooper, those guys are going to want the ball a lot. And Baker Mayfield, he likes to be the risk taker, the gambler, and throwing the ball down the field all the time. No, that's not the way that they should win. So that's going to be, if they go the route that they should go, I think they can win the division. And they could be a playoff contender. I really do. But I think that just Mayfield in his nature, he's going to turn the ball over a little bit more than he should. And that ultimately is going to hurt the team as far as winning the division. Pittsburgh is a wild card as well, figuratively and literally, for a wild card as far as maybe being a wild card team and wild card in general. Ben Roethlisberger, he was out all of last season dealing with his arm injuries. He's back. You have to wonder if he's at an advanced stage. Physically, where is he at? He's been dealing with a lot of injuries. If he can come back and play at a competent level, Pittsburgh could have been a playoff team last year, and they're playing with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges as their quarterbacks, two guys who are career backup caliber quarterbacks. Now, it was a very good job by Mike Tomlin to keep them in playoff contention through the regular season. So Roethlisberger should be an upgrade in that regard. And defensively, you saw them play a little bit better and get back to when you see the Steelers, you usually think of the defense, and they showed improvements in that field in that regard. But I think that they still have a lot of questions that need to be answered. So I have them finishing third in the division. Cincinnati is last. I'd like Joe Burrow. I think he's going to have a very solid rookie campaign. He's my rookie of the year as far as offense goes, because I think he's going to put up some good numbers. But I think the Bengals have a lot of work to do and are trying to improve, and that means they're going to be a last place team in the AFC North. AFC South, I have Tennessee winning the division. I think the Ryan Tannehill experiment is legitimate. Now, they're not going to be a Super Bowl winner, but I think what you saw from him in that offense with Derrick Henry at running back and Mike Vrabel's approach to things, Ryan Tannehill can do that. He can be a competent quarterback in that system. And we talk about line play, Tennessee has a very solid offensive and defensive line, and that's why they are able to control the ball through the majority of their contest. And I think that's a way they'll find. And then Davis as well, nice wide receiver for Tennessee, good deep threat. We saw him have some flashes in the postseason. I think Tennessee wins the division. We went over Houston earlier with Kansas City. I think they finished second. I've seen some Indianapolis love out there with Phillip Rivers, and we're talking about line play. Their line play is very good, especially on the offensive side for Indianapolis. I don't think Phillip Rivers, though, is going to be able to lead this team to a winning record overall. I think what you saw with him last year in Los Angeles with the 20-plus interceptions, that's really more of what you're going to see from him. The good news, though, if you're an Indianapolis supporter, he is now under Frank Reich. He is under a very competent organization. No disrespect to the Chargers, but they have been very not competent the past few seasons. So he goes on the right. He's going to play with probably the best offensive line he's ever played with. And that's saying that with some Charger teams that made the conference championship game under Phillip Rivers. So he's going to play with the best offensive line. He's going to have some good skill positions there. But I just think at this stage of his career, he's not the player he was 10, 15 years ago, and that he's not going to be able to take advantage of this situation overall for the Colts. Jacksonville, they're contention for the worst record in the league. I don't care if you have Minshew there or whatever they decide to do at quarterback. Just they got rid of Fournette. They made a lot of offseason moves. They're not tanking necessarily, but they are in major rebuild mode. You got to worry about Marrone there as head coach. The West, Kansas City, they're going to win the division. We've gone over KC already, what they have done. I think the poo-poo platter of Denver, Las Vegas, and the LA Chargers, you can pick any of those teams to finish second. I'll go with the Broncos. Now, Von Miller being out for the majority of the season, probably out for the year with the ankle injury. He's maybe the best pass rusher in the NFL. That's a major loss for them. I think Drew Lock will do okay at quarterback. And that's why I'm looking at the quarterback situation. I'll take Lock over Derek Carr and over I guess Tyrod Taylor will probably start or be in the running in Los Angeles for the Chargers. But Justin Herbert is rookie, unproven. You never know with these rookies. So I'll just take Denver, finish second in that division. So going over to AFC once again, I have New England, Baltimore, Tennessee, and Kansas City winning their divisions. As far as wild card goes, I'll go with Buffalo and Cleveland, and I'll say Houston is a team of intrigue as far as the wild card spots go. Ultimately, though, is Kansas City winning the division, winning the conference, and winning Super Bowl. They're going to beat the Seahawks in the championship game. I'd love to pick another team like a Saints to be fun. Cowboys and Super Bowl would be an interesting twist. They have the talent, I think, to possibly make a solid run. You know, Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers, when he's still is Aaron Rodgers. He can still lead a team to a lot of good things. You got to figure Lamar Jackson is going to put together a solid playoff run eventually. So if he gets hot and gets his things right, Baltimore can be a team of intrigue. But the Chiefs are the best team in the league, and they have everything going for them right now. And that's why I think they are it's the NFL, nothing's a lock, but they are pretty much in a solid guaranteed position to be right there in the Super Bowl for the AFC. NFC, as I said, the only teams that I'll put it this way. As far as the AFC, I think Baltimore and Kansas City, that's what's going to come down to. Either one of those two teams as far as the championship game. As far as the NFC, I can make an argument for New Orleans, Tampa, Dallas, Green Bay, Minnesota, Seattle, San Francisco. As far as I can make a case of them being in the Super Bowl. Now, some cases be stronger than others, but I can make that argument. And you can even, in a pinch, even the Falcons and the Rams, you can talk me into I wouldn't put any money on it, but if you can convince me with a nice conversation of those teams being Super Bowl contenders. So those are my thoughts as far as the divisions go. As far as the MVPs and Players of the Years and all that fun jazz, I think the grouping of Russell Wilson, Pat Mahomes, and Lamar Jackson, those are going to be the finalists for the MVP. You can pick either guy. A guy repeating as MVP of the NFL, that's very tough to do. So Lamar Jackson's at a disadvantage. I think Russell Wilson will be the guy that ultimately wins it. It'll be a better story. And that team's going to be really, really good, and he's going to get his MVP. Those other guys have one, and Russell doesn't have a regular season one. I think Drew Brees will be an intriguing story as well. As far as that goes, I think he's going to be a nice storyline that people are going to really want to push. Because as I mentioned, I think it is last year in the NFL, and voters love storylines. So that's going to be of intrigue. As far as the Offensive Player of the Year, I think Lamar Jackson's going to win that. I think the numbers he's going to put up are going to be very, very strong. So he's going to get that award. Mahomes will be right there as well. As far as offensive guys who just put up big numbers, I think Ezekiel Elliott's going to be right there. Christian McCaffrey is going to be another guy that offensively is going to put up a lot of numbers. I mean, Michael Thomas is going to catch 130 to 50 balls this year, no matter what. So that's going to be very fun as well. So we'll see what happens with all of that. Defensive Player of the Year, I mean, it's the Aaron Donald Award right now. People like to give it to him. I think Chandler Jones is going to be Arizona's. He's going to put up some solid numbers in that regard. As things go there. So those are kind of the guys to look out for. Defensive Player of the Year is very odd, very tough to figure out because cornerbacks rarely get love in that regard. So you look at your Gilmores in New England or your Lattimores in New Orleans. I mean, those guys are elite defensive guys, but it comes down to numbers quite a bit. Maybe Chris Jones gets some love in Kansas City. He had a very strong night last night. So we'll see what happens there in that regard. Comeback Player of the Year, as I mentioned, I have Cam Newton winning that over Ben Roethlisberger. That's a very easy position to give the award to. A quarterback that was hurt the previous season. He comes back and does well. So I think that's going to be the Comeback Player of the Year there. Coach of the Year, there's another one where you reward consistency or a team doing well and that you expect to do well and reaches that standard and above, or do you pick that surprise team that you were saying they're supposed to win only 4 or 5 games, but then they become a playoff team? Do we pick that coach? I think Bill Belichick is kind of a combination of both of those things, and that's why he is my Coach of the Year. Expectations are that New England's going to fall apart without Brady, and you have Cam Newton, a wild card at quarterback. We don't know where he's at. I think with the winning the division and New England being a competent franchise and a potential contender in the AFC, I think Belichick gets that Coach of the Year award from people. Rookies of the Year offensively, Joe Burrow, we discussed him. I'm going to take Chase Young for the Washington franchise. Can't call him the R word anymore, and rightfully so. So we'll call him, we tried to do that on our show anyway, but good for everyone catching up on that as far as NFL and otherwise, to not use that R nickname anymore. They're the Washington team. They'll figure it out. But Chase Young, I think he's going to put up some good numbers. He's very flashy, and he's a marquee guy there for the team, and that's going to lead to a lot of attention. And I think he's ultimately going to find a way to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. All right, let's transition to the technical side of Georgia athletics. Only have about 10 minutes left in the show, and that's all we really need, honestly. So as we go along, Georgia Tech opens up the season on September 12th at Florida State. The Yellow Jackets are coming off of a 3-9 campaign in 2019 under head coach Geoff Collins in his first year with the team. He discussed the 2020 expectations for the franchise or for the team and what they want to do in this year.
Thank you for the question. Just the growth, the development. Just when you go out there or you see us during pregame, the length, the speed, the attitude, the cohesiveness on both sides of the ball. We're working really, really hard to put a really good product out on the field. And the basis is guys that play with a ridiculous amount of effort, play together, play really, really hard, more comfortable within our system. The transition piece, we got better and better throughout the entire season last year, and six practices through spring ball, and then all this time we've had with OTAs and an expanded training camp. Just excited to see them go out and play. But the biggest thing is a team that plays together, plays really, really hard, fights for each other, and plays at a really high level. That's the expectation every day and every single week that we're here. The expectation is to get better, learn from every experience, good and bad, that we might go through and play at a high level.
And that was Geoff Collins, head coach of Georgia Tech, discussing his expectations for this year. And here he is discussing Florida State and preparations for tomorrow's contest.
The biggest piece, and just seeing some of the highlights on social media. So even though I don't sit there and watch full games and haven't been able to, you do see the things that happen on social media and the tackling, blocking. Those are things that we've addressed. We actually, every Tuesday, we do our tackling circuit. So it's very detailed on making sure every form of tackle that you could possibly have, we're executing it on Tuesdays at a high level. I did think in the last scrimmage we tackled well, but the big thing is sustaining blocks down the field, playing very, very physical, and the tackling piece as well, and making sure. I think the ATL philosophy that we have, subbing a lot of guys in, getting a lot of guys in the game plan, is going to help in this day and age. Just not being stuck to 12 to 14 guys that are part of the game plan. On defense last year, I think we averaged 26 to 27 guys a game playing 10 or more plays. And in this environment right now that we're going into this season, those kind of things and those philosophies, I think those will serve us well. And then the depth piece is the secondary piece.
And now is Geoff Collins, head coach of Georgia Tech football, discussing the Florida State contest. We'll see what happens there. It's very, very tough to make these predictions as far as yardage and how many yards we're going to have or how many wins a team is going to have. I think for Georgia Tech, a winning record would be a very strong statement. And they only played 10 games this year as we're recording this show. So the 10 winning record is for them would be 6-4. That's a major jump. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think it'll be more competitive in contest. And Florida State, they're going down there. Florida State's defensive line, maybe top 3 or 4 in all of college football. So that's going to be very tough for them to contend with. But outside of that, I think Georgia Tech can make this a competitive game, and we'll see what happens in that regard. Also, make sure to check out our site for our exclusive interview with Georgia State men's soccer head coach Brent Surensey. We talk with Brett about the upcoming year for the Panthers and preparations for their campaign. We also discuss how they've been dealing with the pandemic and how that's affected their training. Really good to speak with them. It was our first interview with them, first time we ever spoke with them, and it was very well done. I enjoyed speaking with them. We're going to have them on probably before their first game, which takes place very, very soon. So we'll have them on the show in the very near future. But we have an interview up on our site, so make sure you check that out. Let's move on to the original free kick portion of our show, which is discussing Atlanta United. The Five Stripes visit Nashville tomorrow on September 12th. Now they're coming off of a 2-1 home loss or road loss to Miami that took place this past Wednesday. Lewis Morgan scored 2 goals in the contest, and that was the difference for Atlanta. And later on in the first half, Atlanta was Let me go over for that from the beginning. Yeah, we're figuring it out. Okay, here we go. All right, pulling up the notes. Morgan's first goal in the night came in the 28th minute off of a counter that had Atlanta really out of position as far as trying to rebound from the corner kick that they took. Morgan was able to take a centering pass from Pizarro, and it was a centering pass. He knocked it down with his right foot and chipped it past Brad Guzan for the 1-0 lead. Atlanta tied the score in the 33rd minute with a goal by Eric Remedi. Remedi drove into the box. He took a shot, and it was taken down while attempting the shot. The rebound came right back to him, and he was able to push the right-footed shot past Luis Robles of Miami to make the score 1-1. Now, Morgan's second goal in the 38th minute made it 2-1 in favor of Miami. Ben Sweat with a crossing pass into the penalty area. Morgan brought it down once again and shot it past Guzan to make it 2-1. Atlanta appeared to tie the score at 2-2 in the 43rd minute when Cubo Torres got a rebound off a penalty shot that was taken by Ezequiel Barco that was initially saved by Robles. Now, that penalty shot was awarded to Atlanta after Miami player Nicholas Figal elbowed Atlanta player John Gallagher in the penalty area. Now, Figal was given a yellow card for the foul. However, then the penalty shot took place, and that's the rebound. Cubo Torres, he put it in. However, Robert Sibagal, the referee, went to VAR, and it was ultimately determined that there was player movement on both sides before that penalty shot was taken. What does that mean? Well, you got a retake of the penalty. And Barco retook the penalty, and it was saved by Robles in the 47th minute. And that was really all the game came down to as far as Atlanta trying to tie it up. United had several chances to try to tie up. Hyman have a shot just outside the penalty area in the 79th minute, and that was saved by Robles. Torres had a low free kick in the 55th minute, and that was also saved by Robles. And outside of that, Atlanta, they outshot Miami 13-8. Had more corner kicks and led them time possession, possession percentage, close to 60%, but they were just unable to get that second goal, that equalizer, to make the game tied up. So here is manager Stephen Glass discussing that lack of offense in the second half.
Their front players were quite aggressive the way they pressed the ball, and later on in the game we didn't quite handle that, maybe putting players too high too early and not being able to build through the thirds like we were in the first half or even early in the second half when we were quite successful. So I wouldn't say panic setting in, but try to do things that are different from the way we're set up. Alter probably a little bit of the game plan and a little bit of the approach from the players as well. So we just need to continue believing in the way that we're moving the ball when you are getting success and continue down that road.
And that was manager Stephen Glass from Atlanta discussing that lack of offense. And here's Brooks Lennon discussing the loss from the Atlanta perspective.
We gave up 2 cheap goals in the first half. Both goals were, came off of our mistakes, going forward. I think one was a set piece that, got cleared out, and, I don't think, we were positioned in the right areas, and they were able to counter on us and, score a goal that we shouldn't give away. You said we had most of the possession tonight, but that doesn't matter, as long as you got to put the ball in the net, and we didn't do that tonight. We had our chances. Unfortunately, we missed the 2 penalty kicks. We had the goal called back for the equalizer, so just a tough night overall. But, like Glassy said in the locker room post-game, we can't dwell on this performance. We're very, very disappointed, but we got to move forward.
And that was Brooks Lennon discussing the loss from Atlanta. And Atlanta now visits Nashville on September 12th, tomorrow. It's their last scheduled regular season home game before another break. I guess you can call it, from Major League Soccer. So we'll see what happens there. They need to win to keep themselves in playoff contention or in a good position in that regard. So we'll see what happens with that contest. We'll have a full recap the next edition of the Sports Inquirer Show for you. And then finally, we'll discuss NBA basketball. I think you're starting to see the top teams rise to the top. Well, top teams rise to the top. It's going to turn into an all Los Angeles final with the Lakers and the Clippers Clippers should close out Denver tonight. They're up 3-1. They play tonight in Game 5. The Lakers are rolling past Houston right now. They're now up 3-1 in their conference semifinal as well. Now the East is intriguing. We've already seen Miami advance to the conference final with their 4-1 series win over the Bucks. And tonight is actually Game 7 between Toronto and Boston. Toronto was able to win that double overtime contest in Game 6 to keep their season alive. But we'll see what happens there in that regard. So I think that coming into the contest, I've been saying Boston should win the series. I'll take them to win Game 7, but that was Toronto. They're a tough, feisty team. And Lowry has some big shots. And OG Anunoby, he has been a solid contributor as well. If you're Pascal Siakam, he's got to go for 30-plus tonight, I think, for the Raptors to have a chance. And we've not seen them have a consistent playoff series. I think when you have Jaylen Brown and especially Jason Tatum, those guys, if they step up and give you the performances that they should, that should be a victory for the Celtics. So we'll take Boston to win Game 7 tonight and to win the series. And that wraps up today's edition of the Sports Inquirer Show. As always, want to follow everything that we're doing, head to the mothership, thesportsinquirer.net, and also go to our Twitter and Instagram pages under Sports Inquirer. That's all one word. You can also go to Facebook under The Sports Inquirer. And then finally, subscribe to us on SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes. Until next time, good fight, good night, be safe.